All right, they're math scholars. Today we're going to talk about solving and graphing inequalities. So I'm going to ask you to put your name and the date on your homework before we start. Now you might remember inequalities from the other day. We talked about actually this afternoon. Greater than, less than, equal to, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, not equal. Today we're mostly going to be focusing on these two and these two, that greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to signs. Okay, so I got some good news. If you know how to solve equations, which you do because you're basically professionals at it, you can solve inequalities. So to solve inequalities, you follow the same rules and steps as you would to solve equations. The first most important thing, don't forget about keeping balance. And you guys know what that means. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Really, the only difference when you're working in solving inequalities that's different from solving equations and expressions is instead of an equal sign, you're going to have one of these greater than or less than signs. So just like when you're bringing it down just like when you bring down the equal sign, you're also going to bring down an inequality sign. Now just a reminder, inequality signs are going to be these greater than, less than, greater than, equal to, or less than or equal to signs. So far this kind of sounds a little muddled, but as soon as we start, I bet you're going to be like, oh, I totally get it. So, two most important rules, whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, and don't forget to bring down your sign in the middle. So, let's try one. Here we have 1 plus r is greater than or equal to the number 4. Now, it works the same. Just like with an expression or an equation, I know I want to get the variable by itself. Here my variable is r. That means I want everything else on this side to be gone. The only thing I have over here is 1. I'm going to use an inverse operation to get rid of this 1. And I know the inverse, or the opposite of plus, is minus, which means I'm going to subtract 1 from this side. Now, I know it's very important to keep balance in my equation. Whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So on this side, I'm going to subtract 1. So 1 minus 1 means I get 0, which cancels this out, which means on this side, I just have r. 4 minus 1 is 3. And then I just remember to bring down my sign. Make sure you remember to put that line underneath if it has one, because that makes it mean something different, like we talked about this afternoon. So far, you're probably like, wow, that's really easy. And like I told you, you're totally going to get it. That's the first half. That's solving an inequality, which means r can be any number that's greater than 3 or equal to 3. It could be 5. It could be 9. It could be 472. It could be 300, 900, 400. It could be any of those numbers as long as it's greater than or equal to 3. Okay. Next, we're going to worry about graphing an inequality. And I'm moving kind of quick because I figured you guys are going to pick up that solving piece real fast. So, when you graph an inequality, you're going to make a number line. Make sure your number line has the inequality on it. So when I make my number line for this one, I'm going to want to make sure there's a 3 on there. I know you're probably shaking your head like, duh, but it's important to mention. Next, you're going to put a closed or open circle above the solution. The solution being 3. I know you're probably thinking, what does that mean? Well, a closed circle is going to look like that. It's going to be like a colored in circle. And an open circle is going to be a circle that's not colored in. So we could actually make this a little bigger and darker if we wanted. Now, how do you know whether you put a closed or open circle? Great question. It's actually pretty simple. If your inequality sign is greater than or less than, meaning there's no equal to underneath of it, your circle will be open. And the reason is we know that it can't be equal to that number because there's no equal sign. It either has to be greater or it has to be less than. Which means if you do have the equal sign underneath your inequality, making it less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, your circle will be, you guessed it, closed. All right, then you're gonna point the arrow in the direction of the other solutions. So if it's if it's less than, it's gonna go that way. I guess it would help if I showed you. Sorry. If it's greater than, it's gonna go this way. All right, let's try it. So I have solved my inequality. I'm gonna graph it. The first thing I do, make my number line. Let's just start it out easy. We're gonna do a 0. Sorry, I need to hold my paper here. Let's just make this to 8, which makes this 4, 3, 2, 1. And since I'm making my number line by hand, it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay, as long as you can, except I should learn to count. That should be 5. Okay, now that I have my number line, I need to make sure my solution is on it. I have the number 3 is on it. I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna make my circle above my solution. My solution is 3. Because there is a equal to sign underneath of it, I'm gonna use a closed circle, which means above the number 3, I'm just gonna do a closed circle like that. Kind of like plotting a point. Now, it's greater than 3. That means, or equal to 3. It can be 3 or any number higher. That means my arrow is gonna go that way. And my arrow got a little bit away from me. You wanna keep it closer to the line, but you get the gist. All right, so down here, your number lines are already created for you. You are just solving the inequalities, plotting your points, and drawing your arrows. I know you guys can do it. I can't wait to see your work tomorrow.